There are patterns at Hogwarts. After enough years inside those walls, enough sorting ceremonies, enough first-year faces cycling through the Great Hall, enough September mornings watching 11-year-olds cross the lake with their owls and their trunks, and their completely unfounded certainty about who they are, you start to see the types. Not the houses. Deeper than the houses. The actual categories of person that Hogwarts produces or reveals or simply holds long enough for the shape to become visible. There is the one who arrives brilliant and leaves dangerous. The one who arrives invisible and spends 7 years learning, slowly and at great cost, that invisibility was never actually safety. There is the one who was built for this world from the beginning, who walks into the castle on day one like they are returning somewhere rather than arriving somewhere new. And then there is the last one. Every year in every cohort, there is one that doesn't quite fit the pattern, sits slightly outside the categories, remembered differently by different people, not because they were particularly remarkable, but because the memory of them doesn't hold its shape the way memories usually do. Ask 2 people who knew them to describe them, and the descriptions don't match. Not in the way that normal perception differs, in a way that suggests the 2 people may not have been seeing the same thing. Nobody talks about this type. This is the story of all 4. Pay attention to the last one. Part 1. The one who arrived brilliant. You knew the answer before the professor finished the question. This wasn't arrogance, or it wasn't only arrogance. It was the particular condition of someone whose mind had been running faster than its environment for as long as they could remember. And Hogwarts was simply the first place that came close to keeping up. The books in the library were real books. The magic had actual internal logic. The professors, the good ones, could be pushed, could be asked something they didn't immediately have the answer to. And this, for you, was the closest thing to joy the academic world had ever offered. You were sorted into the house that made sense, and you were fine with it, and you moved through the first 2 years accumulating knowledge the way other students accumulated points, automatically, compulsively, because the alternative was boredom, and boredom, for a mind like yours, was its own kind of pain. By 3rd year, you had read ahead. By 4th, you had found the restricted section's actual limit, which was less a restriction and more a suggestion for people with less patience. By 5th year, the OWLs were administrative rather than challenging, and you sat in the examination hall and finished early and spent the remaining time thinking about 3 problems you hadn't solved yet. Here is the thing nobody told you about arriving brilliant. The world is not structured to receive you comfortably. Brilliance without application is restlessness. Brilliance without humility is isolation. And Hogwarts, for all its extraordinary qualities, is still a school, which means it is still primarily designed for the middle of the bell curve, and you were never anywhere near the middle. You left Hogwarts with the best results of your year, and a specific kind of loneliness that the results didn't reflect, and that you would spend the next decade learning to name. The brilliance was real. The cost of it was also real. Both things. Always both things. Part 2. The one who arrived invisible. Nobody remembers exactly when you got there. This is the thing about being the invisible type. It's not that people dislike you. It's that you don't fully register. You are present in every memory of the common room, every study session, every meal in the Great Hall. But you are present the way furniture is present, as part of the context rather than the content. People would say later that they knew you. What they mean is that they knew you were there. You spent the first 2 years believing this was temporary, that you would find the thing, the moment, the group, the version of yourself that was visible, and it would resolve. Other students found their people in the first month, some in the first week. You watched this happen with the particular attention of someone who has a lot of time to watch things because no one is watching them back. 3rd year you tried. This deserves to be said clearly. You tried in the specific way that invisible people try, which is carefully and without drawing attention to the trying, because being seen, attempting connection, and failing is considerably worse than not being seen at all. Some of it worked, partially. You had people to sit with. People who would have noticed, eventually, if you stopped showing up. This is not nothing. You told yourself this regularly. This is not nothing. What Hogwarts gave you, across 7 years, was time. More interior time than most people accumulate in a lifetime. You learned things about yourself in that silence. Real things, useful things, that the visible students, moving fast through their loud and witnessed lives, never had the stillness to find. You left quieter than you arrived. But you left knowing exactly who you were. That turned out to be worth something. Part 3. The one who was born for this. You walked into Hogwarts like you were coming home. Not metaphorically. Physically, the posture, the pace, the way your eyes moved through the entrance hall on the first night. Not wide with wonder, but scanning with recognition. Like someone checking that the furniture was where they left it. The other first years were overwhelmed. You were oriented. This is what it looks like to be built for a world from the beginning. Your family had been magical for generations, deep enough that the magic wasn't remarkable. It was simply the texture of life. You grew up with portraits that talked and fireplaces that traveled and the particular rhythms of a household that operated on different physics than the one most children inherit. Hogwarts was not a revelation. It was a formalization. By second year, you were moving through the castle with the ease of someone who has read the manual and also grown up adjacent to the author. The social architecture of the houses, the unwritten rules of the corridors, the careful ecosystem of professor relationships. You understood all of this instinctively because you had been prepared for it, specifically and deliberately, since before you could fully read. People mistook this for arrogance. Some of it was. But underneath the arrogance was something more complicated. The particular pressure of someone who has been told their whole life that they are the continuation of something important. That the family name means something, and the meaning requires maintenance, and the maintenance requires you. You carried this well, mostly. You carried it the way you carry anything you've never known the absence of, without thinking about it, which is the only way to carry something that heavy for that long. You left Hogwarts exactly as prepared as everyone expected. What nobody had prepared you for was what to do if you ever decided the thing you were continuing wasn't worth continuing. That question arrived later. It arrived quietly. It never fully left. Part 4. The one who was never human. You remember arriving. This is important. You have the memory, the boat, the lake, the castle emerging from the fog. The specific cold of that first September crossing. You can describe it. You have described it, when asked, with a level of detail that satisfies the question and ends the conversation. The detail is correct. You checked. You were sorted and you sat down, and someone passed you food, and you understood that you were supposed to eat it, and so you did, and the food was fine, and you said so when someone asked, which was the right thing to say. First year was a process of calibration. You understood this at the time in the way you understood most things, not from the inside, but from sufficient proximity to the inside that the difference was not visible from where anyone else was standing. You watched the brilliant one, and you replicated the responses that indicated recognition. You watched the invisible one, and you understood the social mechanics of invisibility, and you made sure you did not replicate them. Because invisibility attracts a different kind of attention than visibility, and both kinds needed managing. You were not unkind. This is verifiable. Ask anyone who knew you, and they will say, not unkind. Occasionally distant. Sometimes the response came a half-second late, like a signal traveling further than it should have needed to. But not unkind. The cold never bothered you. You noticed early that it bothered others, and you learned to perform the appropriate responses. The pulled cloak, the comment about the dungeons, the preference stated for the seats near the fire. You sat near the fire. You did not feel the fire. You understood that these were not the same thing, and that the difference was not information you were going to share. There were moments. A few, across the 7 years. A first year who looked at you too long in the corridor, and then looked away quickly, and never looked directly at you again. A professor, divination, which was a class you found most structurally interesting for reasons you did not examine, who paused mid-reading during a palm session, your palm, and said nothing for 11 seconds, and then continued in a slightly different register for the rest of the term. A portrait, just one, an elderly woman in a frame near the fourth-floor bathroom, who would not look at you. Every other portrait tracked movement, engaged with students, commented on the weather. This one turned away each time. Every time. You found this interesting. You did not find it troubling. You do not find things troubling. This is not a choice. It is simply the absence of the mechanism that produces that particular response. Graduation was a ceremony you attended and completed correctly. The handshake, the scroll, the applause from the correct people at the correct moment. You walked out through the main gates with the others, and you stood in the September morning, and the others had things on their faces. Relief, nostalgia, excitement, the particular grief of leaving somewhere that made you. And you stood among them, and you were present, and you understood what they were feeling in the way that you understood everything. From sufficient proximity. From just close enough that the difference wasn't visible. From exactly the right distance to pass. You have been passing for 7 years. You will continue. Nobody is going to check. Nobody knows what to check for.